Welcome to an all-new episode of the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. I am Brian Ciano. Thank you so much for joining us. Take our weekly look at everything going on in the world of combat sports. There's a lot that happened over this past weekend, a lot more that's going to be happening this coming weekend. We're going to cover as much as we can on this show, as we always do. So let's get right into it. We're going to talk later on with BKFC heavyweight Braxton Smith as he gets ready to fight on this upcoming card for the BKFC, the fight night out in Albuquerque this Friday night. We'll see where his head is at as he gets ready to fight for a second time with the BKFC in the heavyweight division. Later on, we're going to talk about the PFL and continue to break down some of the weight divisions that they are releasing for their upcoming tournament schedule. All that stuff is going to kick off in April. We're continuing to find out this month who is going to be as part of these tournaments. And I'm sure in the coming weeks after that, once all that is announced, we will start to find out who the matchups are in the first round when we fight down there in April down in Orlando. We'll get into that. Today, we will talk about this week some of the matchups like middleweight, some of the fighters there, some of the fighters at lightweight, as well as some of the fighters at bantamweight. So a lot of fighters that we'll be talking about for the PFL later on in the show. We will also cover the great boxing card we had this past weekend out there in Saudi Arabia. 3 title fights that we will touch on. There were, I think, just about every fight on the main card was for an interim title or an actual title. We'll cover the top 3 names that were involved in that one as well as looking to some of the matchups that we're going to see in the GFL, the newly formed Global Fight League. They have some fights that are being announced between these two teams, and we'll talk about them and break them down a little bit for ourselves here. A lot of rematches, a lot of ones that you maybe hope to see and didn't get to. We'll get a bunch of those that we'll touch on to close out the show. But first, let's get into this card we have this coming weekend for the BKFC out there in Albuquerque. BKFC Fight Night. It's going to be Friday the 28th, of course, 9 o'clock Eastern, so make sure you're watched out for that and checking in there, as they're going to be up in elevation fighting there, the home of many, many MMA fighters. Of course, you have, the Jackson Wink camp out there. You have lots of other camps out in Albuquerque as well, the great elevation training for a lot of these MMA fighters. A lot of names have come through there, and a lot of those are going to be on this card, as we have every time we go out to Albuquerque. A lot of homegrown talent, or at least home training talent there in New Mexico, fighting in front of their hometown fans, and we'll see what kind of boost they can get from that. It's going to be headlined by one of those guys, Invexzad Usmanov. Usmanov, the 29-year-old from Tajikistan, now in the U.S., trains in New Mexico at Jackson Wink. He is a former MMA fighter, boxer, and BKFC fighter. He's done it all. Right now, 1-1 in the BKFC, lost to Jimmy Rivera, and then beat Trevor Loken, dropping him. So looking to get into the above 500 here and maybe make a name for himself on the back of this former champion that he is fighting, Keith the Rockstar Richardson, 41-year-old out of South Carolina, former Marine, MMA fighter, gym owner, and, of course, former champion in this division at bantamweight. The guy had a rockstar rise, pun intended, 4-0 in the BKFC in 2023 to get up into that title and claim it, and then lost his first defensive hit, unfortunately, to, of course, Blas in a just brutal fight right there that he got taken out, which no one expected him to get beat that badly, but now has recovered. Last December, coming back and beating Larimore pretty quickly, pretty easily, 21 seconds down there in Atlanta. So now he is 5-1 in the BKFC. Number 1 ranked contender in this division. Can he put a rubber stamp on, his claim to wanting a title shot and trying to get that belt back? You know what? I think he does. I see probably a 3rd-round TKO in my view. I think that the experience and the quickness and the power of him is going to be a little too much for Usmanov, and I think that Keith Rockstar Richardson gets the victory. Then the co-main event on this card, Donald Sanchez versus Harrison Aiken. Of course, Aiken, 35, out of Georgia, 1-0 in the BKFC, 3-3, bare-knuckle record overall, fighting in some other promotions before he made his way over to the premier one here. He's won his last 2 bare-knuckle fights. He beat Idris Wasi in December in Atlanta, that same card that Richardson fought on. He's going to be going against Donald Sanchez. We haven't seen him in a little bit. Sanchez is the 40-year-old out of New Mexico, another Jackson Wink guy, a 20-year MMA vet, 3-1 in the BKFC now. He has shown some great power. Lost in Jeremy Smith in his debut, then has won 3 fights in a row over Blake Lacaze, Noah Cutter, and Dallas Davison. Always fighting on those Albuquerque cards, always putting on great performances. We saw him call out, some of the guys above him, wanting some bigger fights. Has not gotten that yet, but now he'll get another chance here against Aiken to show why he could be one of the best in this division and maybe even deserving of a title shot. I think Sanchez wins it. And again, this time I'm going with the local fighter. He has shown how dangerous he is. Aiken, we still have something to see from as far as the BKFC goes. Had a great fight in his last one, but I think that Sanchez with that crowd behind him might be a little too much for him. I think it's going to be a 2nd round finish there in that one. Then at heavyweight, you have Manuel Otero versus Braxton Smith, who we're going to be talking to next on the show. Otero is the local guy, 36-year-old out of New Mexico, a longtime professional boxer, 1-0 in the BKFC. Beat Michael Fournier last May by second round KO TKO. So he's big, he's got power. He's going against Smith, the 35-year-old, formerly Texas, an MMA fighter, 1-0 in the BKFC. I mean, this guy's arms and legs, you go to his Instagram and see the guy's jacked. I know he played a lot of sports before, played football. I would not have wanted to tussle with this guy and had him try to tackle me, rugby as well. I mean, this guy has arms bigger than my head. So he has a lot of power. Now, sometimes that can burn you out in a fight, but I'm sure in the BKFC where it's quicker rounds, quicker action, that might work better for him, and we'll see what he can do against Otero. Both these guys are new to the BKFC, only one fight. They both have that power, that knockout finish. So I don't know if I'm going to, pick one guy to win this one, but if you can get it somewhere in some book that this doesn't go to the distance, this doesn't go to the judges, I am all for that one. Bet the house on it. I don't think these guys are going all five. At welterweight, you have Felipe Chavez versus Derek Finley. Chavez from New Mexico, 41 years old, and then former MMA fighter, 2-0 in the BKFC. He's got a round 3 doctor stoppage over Michael Mano and a round 1 KO win over Leonardo Torres. Has had a good run here with the BKFC so far. Going to be in front of his home crowd going against Finley, the 44-year-old from Indiana, former pro boxer, 2-0 in the BKFC. Lost his first 2, but now has kind of rebounded and won back-to-back fights. Lost to Caleb Harris and Jake Lindsay in those first 2. Some of the best in that division. So the guy got thrown right into the deep end. Struggled at first, as many people, have adjusting to this fight style. It's not easy just taking off the gloves and all of a sudden being a bare-knuckle boxer. But now he rebounded. Sergio Lopez he beat. And then against Joe Elmore last December in Atlanta. That's a big one. Elmore's a tough dude. If you can beat a guy like that, that's kind of like almost I don't want to say a gatekeeper because it's kind of insulting if you label someone like that. But if you can beat that guy, you can be in that upper echelon level and maybe get back to guys like Caleb Harris and Jake Lindsay. We'll see if he gets some fights against those. If he gets a win here, I think he does get the win. I'm going to say like 4th round stoppage in this one. I think he continues on his path of redemption here and gets to above 500 and gets the victory here against Chavez in his hometown. Then last one we're going to hit on here, featherweight, Eric Thuggy Bear Dodson versus Van Vo. Vo, the 41-year-old from Texas, former MMA fighter, 1-3 in the BKFC. Finally got his first win for the BKFC last July over Daniel Petit. He was on a long struggle before that in his first 3 fights. Hasn't had the success that he hopes for, that any fighter hopes for, but kept at it, got that first win. But now he's going to fight a guy in Dodson, who's kind of been back and forth, up and down, but fighting in front of his hometown crowd in New Mexico, the 38-year-old older brother of John the Magician Dodson, former MMA fighter now, won 2 in a row to start his BKFC career. Really quick knockouts. Him and John were, competing for who could get the fastest finish early in their BKFC careers. Then had a little slip up, lost, then won again, then lost. He's alternated the last 3, loss, win, loss. Coming off a loss to Edgar Palozzo last June in Hollywood. So does he keep that pattern going and get the win? I'm going to say he does. Against a guy like Van Vo. Vo, not to disparage the guy, not to knock him down, has had, not a lot of success with the BKFC. I know he got that first win, but the power of Thuggy Bear, I think, comes through. And I think he gets back to the quick finishes, first round KO for him. But that is some of the top fights that we have going on out there in Albuquerque this coming weekend, Friday night. Make sure you tune in on the BKFC app and BKFC.com. I'll be watching. There's going to be some great fights. Looking forward to seeing what a lot of those fighters do, especially Keith the Rockstar Richardson, if he can continue his path towards getting back to redemption and getting that shot at Blas and trying to get that belt back. A guy like Dodson, can he get back on the up and up and try to get into the title picture? And more importantly, a guy there like Donald Sanchez, does he make that stamp that he's one of the best? When we come back, we'll talk to one of those guys that we just talked about fighting this weekend in Braxton Smith, the beautiful monster, here on the Combat Sports Report.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
The Knicks versus the top 3 teams in the league. Oklahoma City, Boston, Cleveland, 0-7. And you take out the 110-104 loss to Cleveland at home in October, and they lost by double digits every game. The Knicks will make the playoffs. Number 1, do they fix their defensive problems? And 2, are they actually healthy?
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
You have Duke the 1, Houston the 2. They're the 2 best defensive teams in the country. I want to see them play for the right to go to the Final Four because I think that would be a kick-ass game.
Duke is really great on both ends of the floor. You know, they can score and they can defend, and that's why they win by big numbers all the time, because they're really good on both ends of the floor. I don't trust Houston's offense.
Pharrell coast to coast, only on SportsGrid. The Eagles got it done. If you back them, you're celebrating. Football season may be over, but the action never stops.
Are you ready for some baseball?
At SportsGrid, we're always in the game. We bring you 24/7 betting insights, expert picks, and real-time analysis. Next big play is already in motion. Are you ready? It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. Now, you heard me give my thoughts on what's going to happen with this card this weekend. Going to be a lot of great fights out there in Albuquerque, as there always is. But why don't we get the perspective of one of the guys who's going to be getting in there in that squared circle himself, and that is the beautiful monster, Braxton Smith, joining us now on the show. The heavyweight for the BKFC going to be fighting this weekend against Manuel Otero. Braxton, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your time. How are you feeling as you get closer and closer to this fight?
No problem, man. I feel pretty good. I'm relaxed. I feel like I'm ready to go. Ready to use a lot of speed, man, and just kind of go in there and force my will.
Well, of course, you talked about the speed of the BKFC when the fight that you had so far. You talked about how you've played rugby, you played football, you've done MMA. You've kind of done a lot of different things in your lifetime, sport-wise, physical-wise. You felt like the BKFC was one of the fastest things you've ever done.
Yeah, that's correct. I think it's the fastest sport I've ever played, for sure.
Is that just because of the short rounds that you have and the quick way you got to get going right away? Is it just the excitement, the speed, the guys trying to come right after you? What is it that you felt like was so much faster than something like a football or rugby? I know there's obviously breaks in those during that time period, and it's obviously shorter rounds in MMA. But what is it specifically for you that made you feel like this is by far the fastest?
Yeah, it's really the breaks in between. Like with football, me playing running back, I get a break. Rugby, you kind of don't get a break, but it's nowhere near as brutal. MMA, you can get a break, you can lay on a guy, you can take the fight to the ground. It's a lot of rest periods in between other sports, but BKFC is just fast paced, and you're trying to hurt your other opponent. Your opponent's trying to hurt you, so it's really about who gets off first and who's more accurate. So it's just really fast, man. Like something like I've never experienced before, for sure.
Now, you're not a guy I would have get in front of playing running back, that's for sure. I mean, I know you weighed in 259 for your last fight. I saw you post you wanted to get down for 240 for this one. I mean, you must have been a truck running over people left and right. How are you feeling? How's the weight going? And why did you feel like you wanted to drop some more weight coming into this second matchup with the BKFC?
I'm not a giant heavyweight. With me being only 5'11", I shouldn't really be over 235, 240 pounds if I'm gonna fight in that division. It just limits me on my skill sets, on speed, accuracy, athleticism. It's a lot of things that the fight world haven't got to see me do when it comes to being a true athlete, because I'm carrying a lot of weight. This fight, I'll probably be a little bit higher than I did last fight, which is kind of wasn't, I didn't weight train this camp. I was in between a move and different like finding a different gym and coach. So yeah, my weight will be a little. I'll make weight, of course. I'll always do. Weight will be a little off, but the next fight, I'm definitely aiming to fight at 235 or maybe even make a run at cruiserweight. We'll just have to see. But yeah, my weight's good, perfectly fine, and I'll be fine. I'll be ready to go.
I would not want to be one of those cruiserweights if you get down to that weight class with that muscle and the power that you have shown us already briefly in your time with the BKFC. But now I saw you were training a little bit at elevation too in Denver. Was that to get used to the elevation because of fighting in Albuquerque for this one, or was that just something you always do? Or was it special for this fight?
Man, how you know that? Well, I actually didn't get a chance to go up there. So the heavyweights that I was going to go up there and do some work with, the main guy who was running that camp, he I think something happened with his job, so we had to reschedule. He wanted me to come out. I think it was last week, but I was like, man, like I really need to be with my coach the last week of before fight week before I go out there. So I wasn't able to make it happen. But that's something we already have planned and definitely gonna do for the next camp. I wish I would have got up there though, man. To be honest.
Is that something you have any worry with now fighting in Albuquerque? Because people don't always think of that. They think of Denver and Utah, obviously, as high elevation. You don't think of that with Albuquerque, but it is, and that's an advantage a lot of the fighters who train there obviously have. Is that something that worries you if the fight goes deep? That how that could affect you, or do you think your cardio is going to travel no matter where you go?
So I didn't lift weights this time just because of I wanted to be better cardio wise. I haven't lifted weights in months, so um, I kind of want to. I don't think. I mean, I know you have a little bit of advantage. I mean, he's from there, of course. But if it goes in a deep round, I kind of want to trust my cardio. It's one of the things about me is like my last fight, like I wasn't as tired as I thought I was. A mental thing where I've been in the past, being a self trained athlete. I've never trusted my cardio. So it's like, damn, man, I got to go in here and do it now. Or if I don't do it now, then, I'll lose or it'll never get done. So trusting my cardio mentally and just breathing and, when I'm throwing my strikes and just kind of slowing down and taking my time is things that I've worked on this camp that I've never done before. And that has a lot to do with cardio and breathing and how you do things. I normally just go in here and throw punches and wait to catch my guy before he catches me and get him out of there quick without even breathing or thinking about it. It's just not the way to fight. So he should have an advantage when it comes to the cardio, but I'll be fine. I should be fine no matter what, or no matter where the fight goes for sure.
It is a quick turnaround for you. You just fought in December, but you're looking forward to that this year. You said that you want to fight 6 times this year, which is much more than a lot of people do. You're ready to go quick, and now you're going to do that against Otero in his home turf here. What are you expecting? And you talked about your cardio, you can rely on that, but both you guys had some pretty quick finishes in your first fights at the BKFC. So are you expecting this to not go to that distance and you're just ready for it? Or do you think that this could be one where it's just a slugfest for you guys and could go the distance?
Yeah, I don't see it going the distance. I don't see it going all 5 rounds at all. So yeah, whoever's more clean and more technical and can land the better shots should get the win. And I plan on that being me for sure. And I got a surprise, and I know they thinking that I ain't gonna reveal too much, but I know they thinking something completely different on how I'm coming out. But we'll see. I got a surprise. So.
Well, hopefully you have your surprise for him, and we'll see if there's more surprises down the road, because I know you said you want to fight that much this year because you want to be, fighting for the title by the end of the year, which I'm sure is a lot easier for you now that Ben Rothwell holds it than Mick Terrell, who of course you became friends with and you idolize a little bit. So much easier to go punch that guy in the face, I'm sure, than the guy that you like. But we'll see if you continue on that path this week. Thank you so much, Braxton Smith, the beautiful monster. Appreciate your time and good luck in your fight.
No problem. Thank you guys for having me. Yeah, have a good day.
Brady Tkachuk saying that if his brother did miss that overtime period against Canada like we saw him do, it must be serious out there. And of course, Brady Tkachuk, not a doctor, but you've got to wonder, the status of Matthew Tkachuk and what we're going to find out.
Game time for all of these teams and all these players that were, teammates. Now they're facing off against each other. Now they're back to being teammates, whatever it might be. Like, it's time to get things rolling back in the right direction.
HL today, only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
You have Duke the 1, Houston the 2. They're the two best defensive teams in the country. I want to see them play for the right to go to the Final Four because I think that would be a kick-ass game.
Duke is really great on both ends of the floor. They can score and they can defend, and that's why they win by big numbers all the time, because they're really good on both ends of the floor. I don't trust Houston's offense.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. Shifting gears a little bit here and go from bare knuckle boxing to glove boxing. Go back to the traditional format here as we're going to talk about the big card we had last weekend out in Saudi Arabia, Riyadh, hosting what some people were calling the fight card of the year, one of the best in a long time. It was a great job by them to put so many great fights on this one card. You had pretty much every fight on the main card was for a title fight or an interim title. So there was something on the line in every one of them. Lots of big names combined for this one. And it was a pay-per-view worth watching for sure. Got shaken up towards the middle of the week. Unfortunately, took some of the luster off it, but still, the top fight delivered. And some of the other big names had great performances as well. We'll break them down right now here on the Combat Sports Report. And that, of course, top fight was Bivol versus Beterbiev 2. This was a rematch, of course, for the undisputed light heavyweight championship of the world. Beterbiev got better of Bivol in the first one. To some people's chagrin, there was a lot of people that thought Bivol should have won that decision, but it was a win, of course, for Beterbiev for a majority decision last year. So now Bivol got his chance to get revenge, to get that first loss off his record, and to get all those belts, and he took advantage of it for sure. It was very different than the first fight. The first fight was much of Bivol controlling things throughout the beginning, in and out, landing his shots, not letting Beterbiev land the big shots, and then kind of the second half, Beterbiev landed a nice shot in the seventh, shook Bivol a little bit, and then it was him taking over and getting in control and landing the big shots throughout the rest of the fight, which kind of swung the judges in his favor. This one, it almost seemed like Bivol took those early shots from Beterbiev last fight and said, you know what, I could take your best, so why don't we switch this up? First, second round, he was kind of flat-footed especially, but still landing some good shots, some good jabs, probably got the better of it. Maybe even got the better of the third round. I know Chris Mannix on the broadcast had that one go for Beterbiev, but then, 4, 5, 6 was mostly Beterbiev. Bivol slowed down, still flat-footed, not throwing as much. There were a couple of those rounds that towards the end of the round, he threw some good combinations, maybe kind of a don't forget I'm still here, to the fans, to the judges, to his opponent. But still, Beterbiev was getting the better of the exchanges and throwing more. That all changed. 7 was a lot closer. Bivol started moving in and out like we were typically used to seeing from him. And by 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, Bivol was cruising. The guy was just hard to hit, moving in and out, and Beterbiev started slowing down. And that seemed that seemed like it was the plan. It seemed like Bivol took the shots in the first fight and said, you know what, I'm not scared of this guy. He can hit me all he wants, and I can let him hit me early on, And you know what? That's going to make him tired. So then I flip the switch in the second half and take it over, because that's exactly what he did. He went from standing flat-footed, throwing some stuff in the early going, but kind of bringing his opponent in, taking shots throughout 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7, 8, and beyond. He was the one hopping around like we always see, almost pulling a rope-a-dope there, trying to tire his opponent out and get himself the opportunity to pick him apart. And he certainly did that, and he gets the win by the majority decision to become the undisputed light heavyweight champion. A great fight for him. We'll see if there's a third. I don't know. I think the emphatic last half of that might make it that B-Ball tries to move on, but there's always different things in contracts that could make it something that we have to see. We'll find that out in the future. Other fights that you had that were some exciting fight, or were supposed to be more exciting, but unfortunately had some big names put on big performances, was Joseph Parker getting a second-round TKO over Martin Bakole at heavyweight. Bakole was a late replacement. The guy took the fight on Thursday and didn't arrive until Saturday, replacing Daniel Dubois because he pulled out due to, I believe it was illness. You see there, Parker with some big shots, gets the knockout. Great job by him. When you have an opponent like that who's coming in last minute, a guy who didn't train for you, a guy who maybe isn't on your level, not to put Bakole down. He's had some great fights, but, hasn't had that championship medal yet. You take advantage of it, and that's what Joseph Parker did. So a great job by him to get in there and take that title and do what he should have done against his late replacement opponent. Another guy who did that was Shakur Stevenson against Jod Padley. Now, that one went longer, so you got to give Padley credit. 9th round TKO to keep Stevenson's lightweight title. It was very interesting. Another WBC lightweight title. Another situation where he was supposed to fight Floyd Schofield, but he pulled out with illness in the middle of the week. So you bring in Padley, a guy who in the UK was on a construction site doing electrician work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Wednesday night gets the call and flies over to Saudi Arabia to go fight by Saturday. So, give credit to a guy like Padley, a guy like Bakole for getting there and short notice and putting on what they did. But Shakur Stevens does what he needs to do. Stevenson gets his win, and we'll see if he can get the matchup that he wants later this year. You already was talking about, the big fight that he wants later this year. We'll see if he can make it happen. But great performances overall, a good card, and an incredible main event to top it all off between Bivol and Beterbiev in that rematch. Awesome stuff. Can't wait to talk more boxing with you here on the Combat Sports Report.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
You know the Knicks are talented. They're 37-20. It's not a bad season by any stretch. They're just not being the upper echelon team.
This is the Knicks team right now. They're a very good team. And I'm a Knicks fan. You can't look at there and say, this team can win a championship. They're not good enough. They're not good enough defensively. Are we the New York Knicks or are we the New York Fugazis? Forget about it.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Is that kind of helpful when it comes to preparing for a major? Is that you're just like 1 foot in front of you at this point?
Ideally come to a place here at Bay Hill where I've had good success in the past. I've only played it the last 21, 2, 3, and 4. So, but I've played it well, and I really like that we're heading there with where I'm at right now. I think it's going to tell me a lot.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid, and time to go back and check out some more of what we have found out from the PFL as they continue to announce divisions of their tournament coming up this year. Going to be starting in April, so we're almost to the end of this. We're getting the last few divisions these last few weeks, so let's break it down a little bit and talk about some of the fighters that we are going to see trade shots here for the PFL right now in the middleweight division. Let's hit that one up first. One guy that is going to be on that list is Josh Silveira from the U.S., 32-year-old former PFL fighter. His experience right now, 1-2 in the PFL last year, had back-to-back losses to Rob Wilkinson and Impa Kasanganai at light heavyweight. So he's going to be dropping down here into middleweight. He lost twice, actually, to Impa. He lost to him in 2023, then fought him again in 2024, lost that one as well. So that is part of the skid he is on right now. He's going to be in that fight looking for redemption. Also on this side of the bracket will be Aaron Jeffrey from Canada, the 32-year-old Bellator fighter. Lost to Fabian Edwards last March, but beat Douglas Lima last September. So he is looking to use that experience that he has against some of these fighters in this division to his advantage right now in this tournament as well. The formerly mentioned Impa Kasanganai, that's right, the former light heavyweight champion, going to be dropping down here in the PFL. We talked, before his last fight in that 2024 season with, of course, some of the broadcasters there about, how does he fit at light heavyweight? Does he eventually drop down? Ian Parker said, he thought that he might fit better in middleweight. And we get to see him there this year. 31-year-old former PFL fighter, or continuing to be PFL, of course, is going to be fighting here in the middleweight division after being the former light heavyweight champ for the PFL, and then making it all the way to the finals last year, where he lost to Yagshim Yuradov in the title match. Pretty quick knockout there for him in that one, so we'll see how he recovers. We'll see how he drops the weight, and if he feels a little bit better, a little bit stronger against these smaller opponents than he did against some of those light heavyweights. Also in this division will be Mike Shipman from England, 34-year-old Bellator fighter, on a 3-fight win streak right now. 9 KO wins, 6 submission wins, so pretty well-rounded. Can beat you in any which way he wants to. He's going to be looking to put his stamp on things here in the PFL. Also, Sadabu Sai, the Swedish fighter, 38 years old, so one of the more experienced fighters on this roster and in this tournament. The Muay Thai and kickboxing, extraordinaire. He's fought for the PFL before. Now he's going back down here to middleweight because he has fought at welterweight, fought at middleweight. Last year, tried his hand at light heavyweight in the PFL tournament, went 1-1 in the season. So now he, like Kasanganai, is dropping down here into the middleweight, like also, as we mentioned before, Josh Silveira. So there are a couple guys here in this tournament at middleweight that have been heavier before, that have fought the big boys before at 205, now dropping back down here to see how they fare against the slightly smaller but just as tough opponents here at middleweight. And one of those guys is Sai. We'll see if the age wears on him as the tournament goes on. If he makes it further, that could be something that drags on you when you have the quick turnaround of going from a couple months out each fight. It's a little less than, of course, what they had last year in the PFL with the regular season, where you're fighting 4 times and then you're fighting the playoffs. This one is 4 times overall throughout the year, much more of a reasonable schedule for most MMA fighters, but still could be tough. Some guys like to fight like once every 6 months or once a year. Does that work out for him, or does that hurt him right now at 38 years old? Also on this roster, Dalton Rosta from the U.S., a 29-year-old. Pretty much all his experience throughout his fight career was in Bellator. 8-1 in that. All his pro fights pretty much there. He beat Nordberg Noveni by majority decision last June. That's the last time we saw him. Now moving over onto the PFL side of things to see if he can make a name for him there as well. Also, Murad Ramazanov, the Russian, the 29-year-old. Last year was his first year with the PFL. Now he continues with them. Was 1-2 last year in the PFL. Lost back-to-back fights to Musayev, who, of course, is one of the most dangerous guys in this division. So now he is trying to, get redemption here and do better in this bracket format instead of the regular season tournament that he faced. And then to round it out, Fabian Edwards, of course, brother of Leon Edwards, the former UFC champ, the Bellator, longtime Bellator fighter, 31 years old. Last we saw him was against Johnny Elblin on the October pay-per-view, where he lost to him for a second time. Those are his last 2 fights there, where 2 of his last 3 were against Johnny Elblin, and he came out in the losing end of those. Much shorter, much slower start than we expected from him against Elblin the second time around. And he picked it up at the end, but it was too little, too late. Now we'll see if he can get it going here in this tournament at middleweight. So a lot of great names here. If you're looking at who probably would be some of the favorites, I mean, a guy like Kasunganai and a guy like Edwards and a guy like Sai are probably your top three favorites, I would say, if I'm looking at it from their experience, from the level of fighters they have faced, from either fighting for championships or being former champions themselves. These guys have faced the best of the best in multiple weight classes for some of them. So I think they are going to be some of your top favorites when we start getting fights announced and brackets and odds for all these fights. We'll check that out as they come, of course. Then we also found out the lightweight division. That's going to be headlined by some guys like Clay Collier from the U.S. The 31-year-old is very much a stand-up fighter with 12 knockouts, TKO victories, 10 decisions. He likes to keep it on the feet. Was 1-3 last year in PFL, lost to AJ McKee, Patricky Pitbull, Burnell, and Brett Primus. He beat Patricky Pitbull, sorry. He got 3 out of 4 there. Lost to McKee, beat Pitbull, lost to Brunel and Primus. He was a former UFC fighter, former PFL fighter, so he continues with the PFL here. So he is looking to kind of rebound and get back into his winning ways, as he had a rough stretch there for a while in the UFC. He's also going to be facing guys like Alexander Shabliy, the Russian, 31-year-old former Bellator fighter. Lost his only fight last year to Usman Nurmagomedov for the Bellator belt. So, fought at the highest levels, but failed in that one. Has not been the most active fighter with Bellator, as we've had with a lot of them. You do the transition, switching between the two organizations, what they're going to do. Some guys got left on the sidelines. He might have been one of them. Got his title shot, but it did not pan out. Now we'll see what he can do getting into this tournament. You also had Mads Burnell from Denmark going to be on that roster. 30-year-old, former UFC, Bellator, and PFL fighter. He has fought everywhere you can fight right now. Very much a ground guy, 9 submission wins, 10 by decision, 2-1 in the PFL last year. So he is looking to make his mark in the PFL again this year and improve upon that record. You have Mark Diakisi from the Democratic Republic of Congo. The 31-year-old is former UFC and Bellator fighter, another stand-up guy. He likes the action, as you can see here with him training. He likes to throw those elbows, those knees. He likes to get the awkward strikes that maybe you don't see coming. Beat Tim Wild last September by decision in his first fight with Bellator. You have Alfie Davis from England on this roster as well, the 33-year-old former Bellator and PFL fighter. Lots of decision wins. He's a guy that, when he's fighting, if he can get into the prop bets, look for the over total rounds, because that's the way he likes to go in a lot of his fights. Was on a 3-fight win streak in Bellator before he lost his first PFL fight last year to Mansour Bornai by rear naked choke last November. So he's looking to get in a much better place in the PFL than he was with his one fight last year. Brett Primus from the U.S., another guy a little longer in the tooth, but a veteran, knows how to win. 39 years old, the American is a former Bellator and PFL fighter. Last we saw him was against Robotinov in the 2024 finals last year. So 3-1 last year for the PFL in their tournament. Did a great job making it all the way to the end, but it just wasn't enough as he lost in that title match there, looking to get redemption once again. J.J. Wilson from New Zealand will also be in the mix here for the PFL in this division. The 27-year-old is a former Bellator fighter. Lost to Robotinov in 2022. Won his last 2 Bellator fights before that, so it's been a while since we've seen him in the mix. He's had some time off there. We'll see what we can get from him in his return to the cage here and what he has in store for the PFL and this tournament format. And we'll finish it with Gazi Robotinov, the former mentioned Robotinov, the champion for the PFL, the Russian 31-year-old from Dagestan, fought for Bellator, fought for the PFL. He's on a 10-fight win streak, 4 wins last year, including that title fight against Primus. He beat him to win the lightweight title. A great fight for him, as we see there, with those punches, just beating the veteran, taking that cool $1 million check, and now he looks to continue to be the best lightweight in the PFL as he joins this format. That's not it. We got more coming up. We're going to talk about bantamweights and maybe even have a little interest in what divisions we haven't seen and who could be in those coming up next on the Combat Sports Report.
The Eagles got it done. If you back them, you're celebrating. Football season may be over, but the action never stops.
Are you ready for some baseball?
At SportsGrid, we're always in the game. We bring you 24/7 betting insights, expert picks, and real-time analysis. Next big play is already in motion. Are you ready? It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're gonna go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's gonna help me get the job done. There is not gonna be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back as we continue to break down the divisions that have been announced for the PFL for their tournament this year, 2025, in that new format. We also heard from them about the bantamweights and who's going to be in that tournament as yet another division that is going to be exciting. A lot of fast fighters here in this one. Let's get right into it and break it down. And then before we get out of here, maybe we'll ponder a little bit about who else we might see, because we still have two divisions to be announced in the upcoming week. And those are the big boys. So we'll touch on that as well. And the bantamweights, one of the fighters who's going to be part of that is going to be Zubenzui Ruiz from Spain, the 31-year-old. He's been in the PFL for one fight before this, fought back in 2022. So his only PFL fight came almost 3 years ago. So returning to this organization for the first time, has only had one fight since then. So we'll see how he's been. If there were any injury concerns, other things going on in his life that kind of precluded him from doing more. But, returning to the PFL for the first time after a couple of years, and we'll see what he can do in this tournament against just some badasses. You got guys like Kasim Kazmanov from Russia, the 30-year-old former Bellator fighter, a submission artist. 9 of his wins are by submission. He likes the ground game. Had 2 fights for Bellator before this, before he moved over to the PFL. Both of those were by decision. So kind of not the norm there for him, a guy who has had a ton of submission wins, as we mentioned, throughout his career, and then going by decision as he moved up into Bellator, into some of the tougher fighters in the world. So we'll see now as he goes into this tournament in the PFL what he can do, if he gets back to the ground game and choking people out, or if this is a situation where you're gonna have to watch out and he's gonna have to last and put things in the hands of the judges going forward. Also from Tajikistan, you have Sarvarjan Khamedov, the 27-year-old former Bellator fighter, unbeaten so far in his MMA career, 16-0. 3 of those fights were in Bellator. He had 1 fight each of the last 3 years. So we'll see now, what he does, how he handles this format, because that's a big thing for, a guy who has only fought once a year. Now you're fighting at least 4 times this year. So is he prone to injury? Is that why he had those long gaps? Is it a situation where he just likes longer training camps and now he's going to have less prep between, if he gets the victory, going from round to round? All that can play in for the first timer getting into a tournament format like this. We'll see how that works for him as he tries to continue his unbeaten streak in his MMA career. Also on that roster will be Jake Hadley from England, the 28-year-old former UFC and Bellator fighter, on the struggle bus right now. So we'll see if he can get off that schneid and do better in this tournament format for the PFL. He lost 3 of his last 4 in the UFC. Now he is coming over to the PFL, trying to rehash, his record and his image and try to show people that he is still one of the best fighters in this division in the world. We'll see what he can do against guys like Magomed Magomedov, the Russian 33-year-old from Dagestan, former Bellator fighter. Another guy who is a big ground fighter for this division. 10 wins by submission. He likes to drag you down, choke you out, and use what he can. Like you see him there, making you wear him like a backpack before he chokes his opponent out. So it's going to be a situation where you need to stay on your feet and avoid this man getting a hold on you. Otherwise, it could be night-night, fight over. His last fight was a loss to Patchy Mix last May. So now he comes over to the PFL and tries to use that great ground game and move on and continue to fight in this tournament. We also have Ciaran Clark from Ireland, the 29-year-old former Bellator fighter, also unbeaten as a pro. He is 10-0 in his career, fought 2 times a year the last 4 years. So another guy not as inactive as we mentioned earlier with Kamadov, but he is a guy who, 2 fights can be going up to 4 fights if you make it all the way in this bracket. So is he ready for that quick transition? We will see as, he continues to try to remain unbeaten in that one. Also, a name like Leonardo Higo, who you know from Brazil, the former Bellator fighter, the 36-year-old, lost 3 of his first 4 in Bellator. It was a tough run for him early on, but then won 5 of his last 6 and is on a 2-fight win streak. This guy is exciting. He's got some great strikes, and we will see if he can do that against the rest of this division here in the PFL. And the last fighter that's going to be involved in this tournament will be Ali Taleb from Sweden, the 27-year-old. He's a PFL fighter, a big striker. 7 KO wins for him. He has fought in the PFL, has fought in PFL Europe, and has fought in PFL MENA, where he won the title last year with a first-round KO of Rashid Haas. So this is a guy who has fought in many different venues for the PFL. He knows this organization well. Now we'll see if he can win this tournament for them as he looks to defeat some of these guys in this great bantamweight division. Now, if you're looking at who are the best, who are they going to be the favorites for this one, you got to think probably guys, Kamadov is going to be up there because of his record. I don't know if Clark is going to have the same cachet. Magomedov and that just devastating ground game is going to be, one of the top guys in this one as well as probably Higo. So a bunch of guys there who have experience, a bunch of guys who can fight different ways, whether it's, the stand-up or the ground game. We'll see how those matchups work out because that is going to be, as we said, a big factor in every one of these tournaments is who do you get matched up with? Does a guy like Higo get matched up with another guy who will strike and fight the way he wants to? Or does he get matched up with a Magomedov who's going to try to drag him down and take his back? There's going to be a bunch of different ways that this one can shake out, and we're excited to see how the matchups go when we figure out who we're going to be riding for this tournament with the PFL down at bantamweight. Now, as I mentioned, still 2 to be decided, to be released to us as far as the PFL divisions. There are 8 divisions. We've gotten 6 of them. Now, if you do the, of course, process of elimination, that leaves next week to find out who the light heavyweight and heavyweight tournaments will involve. There are a lot of names that we've seen in the Bellator and PFL that could be part of this. Of course, some have retired, some have moved on. So if you look at the rosters for the PFL and Bellator over the last couple of years, a light heavyweight, could it be a guy like Antonio Carlos Jr. in it? We saw Yakshim Yuridov, of course, win the light heavyweight tournament last year against Kasanganay in the PFL. Do they hold him off for, other fights and the other cards the way they're doing it, or do they bring him into this tournament? Obviously, Kasanganay is not going to be a part of it. As we mentioned, he's dropping weight and going into a different division. Romero is not going to be part of it. Yoel Romero is in the GFL now. But a guy like Phil Davis, we haven't heard from in a bit. Do we see him as part of this? All that will be determined next week. We'll see from the light heavyweights. And then heavyweights. Do we see guys from the PFL like Popov and Golstov who fought for the title? Do we see Vadim Nemkov getting into this tournament, or is he just built for pay-per-views? Moldavsky, Ryan Bader, do some of these guys reemerge? We'll see. We'll find all that out next week from the PFL here on the Combat Sports Report.
Brady Tkachuk saying that if his brother did miss that overtime period against Canada like we saw him do, it must be serious out there. And of course, Brady Tkachuk, not a doctor, but you've got to wonder, the status of Matthew Tkachuk and what we're going to find out.
Game time for all of these teams and all these players that were, teammates. Now they're facing off against each other. Now they're back to being teammates, whatever it might be. Like, it's time to get things rolling back in the right direction.
HL today, only on SportsGrid.
We know the Knicks are talented. They're 37-20. It's not a bad season by any stretch. They're just not being the upper echelon team.
This is the Knicks team right now. They're a very good team. And I'm a Knicks fan. You can't look at there and say, this team can win a championship. They're not good enough. They're not good enough defensively. Are we the New York Knicks or are we the New York Fugazis? Just forget about it.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
You have Duke the 1, Houston the 2. They're the two best defensive teams in the country. I want to see them play for the right to go to the Final Four because I think that would be a kick-ass game.
Duke is really great on both ends of the floor. They can score and they can defend, and that's why they win by big numbers all the time, because they're really good on both ends of the floor. I don't trust Houston's offense.
Pharrell coast to coast, only on SportsGrid. The Eagles got it done. If you back them, you're celebrating. Football season may be over, but the action never stops.
Are you ready for some baseball?
At SportsGrid, we're always in the game. We bring you 24/7 betting insights, expert picks, and real-time analysis. Next big play is already in motion. Are you ready? It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to the Combat Sports Report. As we wrap things up here on SportsGrid, thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate you always taking part in the show. We appreciate the beautiful monster Braxton Smith for joining us, the BKFC heavyweight, as he prepares to do battle for the BKFC out in Albuquerque for his second fight here this upcoming weekend. We look forward to seeing more from the PFL of that light heavyweight and heavyweight divisions. Looking forward to finally getting the announcements for those tournaments of who's going to be the early matchups that are going to be taking place in April, all in Orlando. We forgot to mention that before that. All those fights has been announced will be down in Orlando for the first round. So we will look up and look forward to those matchups and finding out who will face off. Looking forward to finding out how this thing goes down in Albuquerque. We're looking forward to some more great boxing commentary that we first got to talk about here on the Combat Sports Report. But we're also looking forward to the GFL and some of the early fights for that one. As we started, of course, had the draft. We found out the rosters, who's going to be on each team for the Global Fight League. And we even are starting to see some of the matchups that we'll see for the first time between these teams. Now, of course, it is a team format, as we know and mentioned. So that means, if they're on the same team, they're not going to fight. So maybe if you want some of the matchups that you want, got to do a little finagling, a little trading, back and forth. And we had that a couple weeks ago when Luke Rockhold was traded from Team Dubai to Team LA in the GFL for Grant Neal. So what does that do? Well, that lets us set up the matchup that we want between Chris Weidman and Luke Rockhold. That's one people were calling for, and that's one they will see at middleweight now. Weidman, the 40-year-old from New York, Rockhold, the 40-year-old from California. These guys got a history. They fought each other almost 10 years ago, back in December of 2015, where Rockhold got the fourth-round TKO to take Weidman's UFC middleweight title. But now they match up for the second time here with the GFL. We'll see who will get the better of that one. Of course, Weidman had retired, we thought, from the UFC, only to reemerge with the GFL less than a week later. So now he gets to go fight Luke Rockhold, who we saw in the BKFC, and I've seen another organization since his time with the UFC. Didn't go great against Mike Perry, had that tooth fly out and stopped that fight, but now he goes against a familiar foe here in the MMA world, in Chris Weidman. Also, we will see at light heavyweight, Yoel Romero from Team Miami versus Shogun Rua from the Sao Paulo team. Now, Sao Paulo, this is a matchup of some legends here in different divisions. Romero, used to fight there at a lower division, of course, had some great battles with guys like Rockhold, lost to Nemkov and Bellator. He had trouble making weight in the lower division. So now he'll be at light heavyweight at his older age of 47-year-old, the former Cuban Olympic medalist in wrestling, now going against the 43-year-old Brazilian in Shogun Rua, the former UFC light heavyweight champ. Had a legendary fight, of course, against Dan Henderson, that 5-round battle. Just epic back and forth, Rocky-style fight with this guy's beating up the other guy, then that guy's beating up the other guy, back and forth. Who was controlling that fight? That went to decision. They had a second one. Didn't live up to it, but, I think it was around Thanksgiving Day weekend, if I'm not mistaken, that first one was one of the most epic fights you will ever see. If you want to see, just grit and heart in MMA, go check out that first fight he had against Dan Henderson. But these guys now are going to be matching up. A great striking fighter in Hua versus a wrestler who has some big power in Romero, but has had trouble making weight at times in lower weight classes, as we said, and has had trouble with stamina late in the fight. So we'll see what they can do against each other. Then middleweight, you'll see Uriah Hall versus Douglas Lima. Hall fighting for Team LA, Lima for the Brazilian team. Lima, 37-year-old from Brazil, former Bellator welterweight champion. 2 wins over Ben Saunders. Went 1-1 against Michael Venom Page in his time in Bellator. Now fighting at middleweight against Uriah Hall. The guy from New York, the 40-year-old former UFC fighter. Lost by a split decision win over Gegard Mousasi. Split decision win over Weidman. Beat Anderson Silva. Lost the tough finale to Kelvin Gastelum, but, always an exciting striker. Had probably one of the most exciting knockouts you can ever remember from the tough series there with that spinning heel kick that he had to finish his opponent and move on. Has been a tough guy, always a flashy knockout artist. The problem for him has been sometimes with the wrestling and the ground game. So does Lima try to take advantage of that, or is this a stand-up battle that might favor Hall here with some of his great striking? And last but not least, actually 2 more, heavyweight, Fabricio Verdum from the Brazil team versus Frank Mir from LA. Verdum, 47-year-old from Brazil, the former heavyweight champion of the UFC, has fought in the PFL before, has wins over Fedor Emelianenko, the first loss that Fedor ever had, where he kind of, tricked him into getting submitted. Also beat guys like Cain Velasquez and Big Nogueira. Mir, the 45-year-old from Vegas, multiple-time UFC heavyweight champion. 2 times he beat Big Nog, beat Mirko Cro Cop and Brock Lesnar. This is going to be a great ground battle. 2 of the better, submission artists in the heavyweight division to ever do it. And then bantamweight, a 3rd-time matchup between Uriah Faber and Renan Barão. Faber, 45 from Cali, Barão, 38 from Brazil. Just some epic striking between these 2 guys. Barão's won both those. Can Faber finally get better of him? We will see. We'll talk about that and so much more next week here on the Combat Sports Report on SportsGrid. Thank you so much for joining us.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
We know the Knicks are talented. They're 37-20. It's not a bad season by any stretch. They're just not being the upper echelon team.
This is the Knicks team right now. They're a very good team. And I'm a Knicks fan. You can't look at there and say, this team can win a championship. They're not good enough. They're not good enough defensively. Are we the New York Knicks or are we the New York Fugazis? Just forget about it.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Is that kind of helpful when it comes to preparing for a major? Is that you're just like 1 foot in front of you at this point?
Ideally come to a place here at Bay Hill where I've had good success in the past. I've only played it the last 21, 2, 3, and 4. But I've played it well, and I really like that we're heading there with where I'm at right now. I think it's going to tell me a lot.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.